rather daunting being here. It's been nearly 2 years since I've been on stage, and the only time I've been near a microphone is my engagement party about 8 months ago. So you haven't thrown tomatoes, you did a clap. This is a good start. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable than what I thought. But I want you to get to know me before I speak to Daisy, because you do know me as the Royal Hoax DJ, and I do have a real name, and that's Mel. I'm from South Australia, and I'm a farm girl. I was born and raised on a farm. It was quite different to city life. You are free to do what you want. It doesn't matter if you don't have a shower for a few days. There's no peer pressure, there's no bullying. You're completely free. So when my family moved to the city, everything changed for me. I became a teen runaway, dropped out of school, hung around with a really bad crowd, and went down a really bad path. And what brought me back from that was radio. I started volunteering when I was 16, and when I went into that station and they said, you know, when you're on air, you just be yourself, you just talk and you have fun. And I couldn't believe that people get paid to do that. You know, what an incredible career. So from that moment, I knew radio was for me, and that was 15 years ago. So I then worked for Australia's biggest radio networks. I did every single job you can imagine, from a solo announcer in the morning, in the afternoon, a breakfast show, a night show. I even worked behind the scenes doing producing. So I've been on the other side of it as well. And when I was growing up, the Hot 30 Countdown was the biggest show in Australia. I used to listen to it and love it. And the thought of one day being able to work on that show was a very surreal feeling. You didn't think it was possible. And that dream came true for me in 2012. I got to do the Hot 30 Countdown, which was a huge show. We spoke to all the celebrities, One Direction, Ed Sheeran, Rihanna, Zac Efron. It was incredible. It was absolutely my dream job. I'd go in there every day being so thankful for being able to do that job. And in one moment, I lost that job. I lost everything. And then you're faced with something that you can't even imagine. And through it all, a lot of people have asked, well, how did you get through? A, you need to fight. You need to fight for your life. You need to fight for what you believe in. And to ascertain what I really believed in and what was truly me, I use 5 words to describe myself: unique, passionate, fun, honest, and it used to be fearless. I used to be fearless. I would give anything a go. I'm not fearless anymore. I've replaced that with strength. But one of the words that I used all the time was honest. Am I being honest to myself? Am I being honest to the people involved in this prank? And I used that with everything I did. I used that filter to stay true to myself and said, am I being honest? And that got me through. So I encourage you to work out your 5 words. If you're faced with adversity or when you're on air, remember your 5 words and make that your filter, because that will help you understand who you are and what you believe in. And no one can take that away from you. So I really encourage you to ask family, friends, think of it yourself, 5 words that you'd use to describe yourself. Before I joined Daisy, I want to quickly talk to you about trolls. In radio, when I first started, I'm sure a lot of you would be the same, we'd maybe speak to 5 callers on the air through the phone system. There was no social media. There was no bullying, there was no trolls, and I'm sure a lot of you have had to face that. People are just so nasty. How's your day going? Oh, your hair is shit. You know, they'll find any reason to be mean sometimes. So how do you deal with that? You really need to ignore them, but that's too hard. So I've created 2 characters that I think are fictional characters. They're not real, probably are real. Old Mate and Cat Lady. So whenever a guy writes something horrible to me, I think of Old Mate. Old Mate's in his 40s. He's got a huge beard up. He wears a singlet. He hasn't been laid in about 4 years. He's revolting. At the moment I can see him. He's eating his pizza. He's making a mess. He's disgusting. Cat Lady, she's got 12 cats. She probably should hook up with Old Mate. She hasn't had a shower for a couple of weeks. And it really helps when you visualise who they are, because they're not normal. They're not the person sitting next to you. They're not the doctor saving a life. Trolls are not real people. We can't see them as that. A lot of them have their own issues, and that's why they attack us. So really try your hardest to not let trolls get to you. And for me, the fictional characters works. There might be a different situation that you can use, or it's actually fun creating your own characters, or you use old mate and cat lady if you want. So don't let them get to you, because it can really affect your time in radio. Thank you.
I just wanted to start. We're going to talk in a lot of detail about exactly how the call happened and the run up to it, what it was like afterwards, and so on, and what your life's been like, and lessons that were learned. But the first question seems to be quite obvious. You did Newsnight last night, I think you're doing ITV tomorrow, you're doing Us today. Why are you here? What's the point of this?
We need to see what we can learn from a tragic situation. If there are lessons to be learned, let's find out what they are and try and make sure a tragedy like this doesn't happen again.
Because I'm sure it will come as no surprise. You know, I've been looking at Twitter, they're already saying she's playing the victim card. She's here to rebuild her own career. You know, yet again, you're getting nasty stuff thrown at you.
Yeah, old mate and cat lady. That's absolutely fine. People can have their opinion, and that's not why I'm here. And you'll soon learn that that's not why I'm here. And I'm hoping that even if one person walks out of this room and it changes their mindset, next time they go to do something that might affect someone, then my job is done. I have achieved what I wanted to achieve here.
Okay, well, we've already had a tweet saying that particularly Australian radio is all about the prank, is all about the joke. So let's go back to, you know, why was it thought a good idea to do that telephone call to the hospital?
I don't know what it's like here, but prank calls in Australia have been around for years. And they're normally quite harmless because you get permission from the person that's been pranked. You know, you always make sure, were you happy with that? Are you okay for us to play that prank call? And that's why it hasn't been an issue. This case was obviously quite different, but the thought process of organising it, you know, it didn't come into account what could go wrong because there was a process in place.
But isn't it the case that quite often if you do a prank call, let's say on a celebrity, and then you kind of, you know, you almost shame them into saying, oh, you know, see the funny side, give us your permission, and they do give their permission because it shows that they've got a sense of humour.
That's right.
That's different to a nurse, because they're not in the public eye, they're not a celebrity, you know, they're an innocent person doing their job. Should it be, you know, it's one rule perhaps for the celebrity prank, you know, prank on a celebrity, and another for a normal person, if I can use that word?
Yeah, look, it's black and white. Don't call emergency services. Don't call hospitals. The problem was with the idea, you know, when you can look back on it in hindsight, don't call a hospital. Even though we thought there was a media centre, or at least a receptionist, someone fielding all the other media inquiries and prank calls that day. You never know.
Okay, so you say don't do it. Why did you do it?
Because we were doing the hot topic of the day, which a lot of people were trying to find a way to talk about Kate's pregnancy. So someone suggested, let's prank call the hospital. Let's have terrible accents and see how quickly we can be hung up on. And we would play that on air of us getting hung up on. We would laugh at ourselves for doing terrible accents and for getting hung up on so quickly.
And obviously, I'm sure everyone in this room knows this, but this was a pre-recorded call. It wasn't live on air, so there was time to change your mind, to think about it, for a bit of sort of thoughtfulness on it.
Yeah, well, for the people involved in the process, absolutely.
And so you went along with it. Were you comfortable with it once you'd had your eureka moment and realised what a coup you had? Were you euphoric?
You know what? It was honestly shock. We didn't quite understand or know. You know, was that real? Did that just happen, or did the producers give us a number and set up us for the prank call, and someone's pretending it worked? You know, we really didn't quite know. I then had to go and record something, so I thought about it and decided that it can't go to air like that. I suggested for changes to be made, that the nurses' voices be dubbed over, private information to be taken out, and to make sure that the comedy was on us.
And that didn't happen?
No, it didn't.
And how hard did you try to get that to happen?
Look, it was just an email suggestion. I have to trust the process.
Yeah.
I have to trust that the right decision's going to be made, and you have to have trust in your team.
So you sent the email, you said, I think the nurses' voices should be played by actors or, you know, colleagues or whatever. I think some information should be taken out. And then when was it put to air? How long was the gap? Was in the show?
Look, there was a good... about 3 hours until the show started, but we didn't actually play the prank call in prime time. we played it towards the end of the show because we still didn't quite understand what we had.
I mean, I remember I was working in the ITV newsroom, and the newsroom, I'm sure everybody in this room will say that the newsroom came to a standstill. I was literally standing up and somebody said, look at that, and it said, you know, prank call, information about Dutch and Cambridge's morning sickness come out, you know, Australian DJs. It was a massive moment. What was that moment like for you? I mean, we were on the other side of the world.
Well, we didn't understand how big that would actually be until the hospital confirmed that it was a prank call, that they had been pranked. No one believed that it was real because it was just so ridiculous for it to be real. And for me, when I was told everything is fine, we're going to play it, and when the hospital confirmed they're not going to be disciplined, they're not going to lose their jobs, you breathe a sigh of relief and you enjoy the moment. And that's what we did. And you know, now that makes me feel absolutely sick. You know, and I still feel for the Saldana family that I was excited when I didn't think there was a problem, when I was assured there would be no issue.
So presumably, in the 3 days before her death, after that, they must have been 3 biggest days of your career. You know, you were being recognised. I mean, no, you were well known anyway, but you know, you were sent into a different level of fame and recognition.
Yeah, it was quite surreal. You had people like Conan O'Brien doing sketches on it. You had all the biggest news outlets talking about the prank call, and majority of it was positive. So you get caught up in that. You do.
And then, how did you find out about her death?
I was in bed. It was midnight in Australia on the Friday night. I was asleep and my boyfriend was on Twitter scrolling through and saw the tweets. You've got blood on your hand. You're a murderer. How can you live with yourself? You know, some horrific tweets were coming through and he is like, what's going on? And my phone started ringing and I was told that one of the nurses had committed suicide.
And what happened to you then? I mean, were you looked after? I mean, you must have been terrified.
There were 3 hours that I don't remember, which is quite scary, and now I encourage anyone that's faced with a traumatic event, get a support network around you straight away, because my boyfriend felt he needed to stand on the balcony to our apartment because he'd never seen that look in my eye, and I don't remember. I was in complete shock and so disgusted with myself that I'd played a part in this poor woman's suicide that was very hard to deal with, very hard to live with.
Despite the euphoria that we've talked about in those previous 3 days, you know, we know that you had doubts because you sent the email saying we should change this. Did you have any niggling, you know, these nurses have been humiliated feeling, or was life just too busy to be thinking about that?
Yeah, and I'm disappointed in myself for not having another think about it, but when the hospital said they've got the support, there is no problem, they're not going to be disciplined, everything is okay, you believe that as well, because it's not only your bosses telling you that, it's the hospital where the nurses work saying there is nothing wrong.
And tell us what happened then with public opinion and you.
After the suicide, it was horrific. And at the time, I felt that I deserved it. People were saying you deserve to die, and I honestly thought I do deserve to die. I have failed as a human being. Someone has taken their own life because of something I was involved with. And I believed and I deserved all of those tweets, and it went on for months. And because I was in lockdown, all I did was read the comments. So I believed it. I believed everyone in the UK hated me and wanted me dead. I believed everyone in Australia wanted me dead. There was not a lot of support at that time.
And were you frightened?
I wasn't frightened because I didn't care. I felt that I did deserve to die. I wasn't frightened. I felt that if I did walk down the street and someone attacked me, that I deserved that.
I know there were people saying you should kill yourself to compensate.
Yeah. And I believed it. And I thought the same thing. And I went into a really deep depression, but I wasn't going to commit suicide. Even at my worst point, it just, when you've got people that are so supportive, they don't let you go down that path. And for me, I was lucky that I had people around me.
Do you think your family were concerned that you were suicidal?
My partner was, yeah.
that must have felt, knowing that he thought that.
Yeah. It was a scary thought, and especially when I don't remember that three hours. To not remember that, you know, what could I have done in those 3 hours if someone wasn't there?
So were people watching you all the time, you know, in a way, a suicide watch? Were family that concerned that they wouldn't leave you alone?
Yes. Yeah, I was never to be left by myself. But I didn't sit there thinking that I wanted to die. I just didn't really feel a lot of anything. It was a constant feeling of numbness.
Now, obviously, you've talked about the support from family, and they were clearly very important, but what about the support from work? I mean, that's more important for a lot of people in this room. You know, what should work have done?
They were great with security, providing me with security when the death threats were happening, and mental health. They sought a psychologist immediately and did what they could to make sure that I was protected.
I think probably everyone in this room saw that interview that you did very soon after the event, and it was clear to people who didn't know you that Mike, your co-presenter, was coping with it a lot better than you were. Was that clear to you?
I think people handle things differently, and I don't know what the statistics are here, but in Australia, 45% of Australians will suffer a mental health illness. There was about 6 to 8 people involved in the prank call, and I just happened to be the percentage that I didn't handle it. I was distraught.
Do you think you did that interview too soon? That TV interview?
I don't remember a lot of the interview, so I'm going to go with yes. All I know is I wanted to say sorry. I wanted to just say sorry for what we'd done. So I agreed to anything and everything at that point, but I had a lot of support around me during that interview. I had a psychologist there, and I spoke to someone immediately afterwards as well.
And work, what would your advice be if something, God forbid, happened to somebody in this room? You know, the management person, what would the perfect management do in those circumstances? I don't know if there's anything that, you know, could have been done more.
Look, it's a hard situation. You can't talk and think for how other people act. For me, I use my support network. I have an incredible manager that wasn't going to give up on me and helped guide me through. And I don't think I could have made as many decisions as I did without her. So, and remember your 5 words. Remember who you are. Don't ever lose who you are through adversity. If you don't feel comfortable with doing something, you need to say. You need to talk up.
And the trolling, did the trolling get worse or better?
It was a good 12 months of trolling. I still have a stalker and a harasser now. But this story, because it was so tragic, didn't go away for a long time. It wasn't just, it's done, everyone moves on and forgets. It's nearly 2 years later, and it's still topical. People still want to talk about it. And I know people will say, well, that's because you're here talking about it. It's because people still want to know.
And you just said you had trollers and a stalker. Do you mean an actual stalker or one individual?
Yeah, one individual. He's been harassing me for 18 months. The police aren't able to trace him. And I first discovered this stalker on my birthday, 3 months after the prank call. I was due to go into hospital for major surgery 3 months after the prank call, and he was making horrendous threats, and I was about to go to hospital, which was fine. It didn't bother me that I was potentially going to be harassed, but I was convinced that he would find out I was in hospital and start prank calling the nurses. And I just felt, because I understand mental health better, but I thought I'd have nurses potentially committing suicide if they were harassed because of me being in hospital.
And were you going in, was you going into hospital related to your mental health and the stress?
No, well, the stress brought on another condition that I had. I'm happy to talk about it. It's called endometriosis, and I had to have major surgery because of it. And I just put a ban on all phone calls, all visitors. So I basically was lying there for 7 days with no contact apart from the nurses, who were just incredible. They really are just so compassionate and incredible people. They work so hard.
And that condition is a fertility condition.
Yes.
That must have fed into your mental health, general mental health as well. I mean, for women, any sign of infertility is...
It did, yeah. And I was convinced that that was my karma that I took a mother, now I don't deserve to be a mother. Now I believe that.
And do you still believe that?
No, it's tough because I've learned to deal with it all. I've addressed all issues with this with my psychologist, and I need to learn that that's not the case. But at the time, I truly believed that. I am going to have difficulties being a mother. Is that karma? Possibly.
Going back to Michael, Christian, your co-presenter, he clearly didn't suffer, as I said before, but his career hasn't suffered in the way yours has suffered either. You resigned, and you haven't worked since. He's just got an award for top jock from the station.
People handle things differently. We just went down two different paths. He wanted to continue his career. He'd only just started that job that week. The second day of his job is when we made that prank call. For me, I could not picture myself walking back into that station. And it wasn't until my engagement party this year where I held that microphone that I realised that I did want to return to media. When I held it and felt so comfortable, that's when I thought, no, this is what I've always known. This is what I've done. It's such a powerful medium to get our messages across. I don't want to give this up.
But do you think that partly your vilification and perhaps his rehabilitation is the way that the media treated the two of you differently? Do you believe that you were treated differently by the media?
I've only just started to really assess this now because I don't want to be insensitive for the Saldana family. This was a tragic event for them. This was very traumatising for them. I don't want it to be about me. I don't want to be the victim. But I was vilified. Oh, whose little phone's going off there? I was vilified the most. I don't know why the media fixated on me. I don't know if it's because I'm female. But I did feel that the trolling and the press were focusing more on me.
I mean, when I look at the cuttings, as obviously I have done, particularly in the run-up to today, it seems to me that there is an element of that, because he tends to be called things like, youthful exuberance and boyish, and it slightly reminded me of sportsmen or businessmen who get caught and they're put on the naughty step, but actually if a woman does the same thing, very often the media have a different attitude and she's going to be vilified and she's going to be a Lady Macbeth.
It did feel like that. It did.
You still want to go back?
I do. And that's why I wasn't sure. But when, like I said, when I held that microphone, and any announcer in this room will know, it's a passion. It's not a job, it's a passion. It's something that you live and you breathe. And when I held it, oh God, I felt comfortable. I could have done those speeches for 4 hours. I would have had to wrap up my own engagement party. I loved it, that feeling again. So, and now I've completely changed though, so I'll be a different announcer. I've learned so much from this. I'm going to be a wiser announcer, and I think that's a good thing, to have people like that on air.
Do you get a more sympathetic hearing in Australia than you do here?
I haven't really been here apart from the inquest. Was my first time here, and now people I've met have been really lovely and supportive, but a lot of the online hate and trolls are from the UK. They just don't seem to move on from it.
You mentioned the inquest. You came over to the inquest. That's the first time you were in this country. Why did you do that?
It's a promise I made to the Saldana family that if they had any questions they wanted answered, I would answer them on or off the stand. And I went there and I did that. I wanted to be a witness so they could ask me anything they wanted. They welcomed me to the inquest. I wasn't able to assist them as much as I would have liked, but I hope they've now got the answers they need to move forward.
But of course, one of the other things that came up in the inquest was the publication of the 3 suicide notes.
Yes.
That must have been very difficult for you to read what she actually wrote.
The first time I heard about one of the suicide notes that I was mentioned in was through the press. I logged online because I wanted to know everything about the Saldana family. I wanted to know everything about Jacinta, so I was constantly online reading everything. And the suicide note popped up and there was my name. Not Australian radio DJ, Mel Greig was in that suicide note. So it's really hard to deal with when you know that someone has thought of you when they take their own life. And that's been the hardest thing to move forward from.
And what did she say specifically about you?
I don't want to repeat that because there was, you know, that's her, that's just a suicide note. I mean, we can Google it and have a look. It's just, I think it's disrespectful to talk about the contents.
But you weren't the only one mentioned in the suicide notes.
No.
And you know, I wonder if, again, in the way that it was reported, it seemed to, you know, it was reported perhaps that it was just you, but it wasn't.
No, it was, MC was mentioned as well, Mike. Both of us were mentioned in that note. I believe the hospital as well was mentioned in that note.
And of course, a lot of people say, why did she take her life? We're not here, you know, we can't possibly know here, but it's perhaps not as straightforward as the humiliation of the prank calls. There were other things going on in her life.
Yeah, Jacinta had a very troubled life. You know, there was some, yeah, which that's not up to me to bring up. We definitely played a part in the stress and the pressure, the prank call, but there were some other things as well. And it's tough for people with mental illness. You know, a trigger like this can cause a lot of distress, and anyone that is suffering depression, to you I say, please keep fighting. Get a support network around you.
She said in that note that she felt you should pay her mortgage of her house in Bristol.
Yes.
How has that played on your mind?
It hasn't played on my mind. It was more being mentioned. And regardless of the contents, Jacinta thought of me before she took her own life. In whatever capacity, I was on someone's mind before they committed suicide.
So going back to the whole idea of prank calls, you know, we touched on it at the beginning. Do you believe there's a place for any of that type of radio joke?
If prank calls are to continue, it has to be on a willing participant, or it has to be a process in place to ensure they are comfortable with it. You have to think about what you're doing. I wish that we had thought about that thoroughly, that maybe radio stations should consider a risk assessment, work out all the possible things that could go wrong, and how are you going to treat that person that has been made a fool. You have to be so mindful because you don't know how someone's mental health can handle a situation.
If you heard a prank on the radio, what would you do?
This is what frustrates me, because I have changed so much. I can't watch those videos or listen to that without thinking, does that person know, and is that person comfortable? And I want to ring and go, is that person okay with what you've just done? I can't stand it. I need to make sure that everyone is okay. And I think that's something that's always going to be with me, something that I'm always going to be pursuing. Even if I see someone getting bullied on Twitter, I don't care if a heap of trolls want to attack me, I will defend that person, because we need support and we need to look out for each other.
Wise words. I'm going to have a quick look at the tweets that have come in. Again, you've got a couple of minutes if you want to send some in now. I'm going to repeat what the hashtag was, if I can find it. I think it was Ask Radfest 2014. So that's Ask Radfest 2014. We've had a few. Sue said, what's the most important lesson? If you feel you've covered that, just say so. But if there's anything else.
Basically what I've just said, like, you need to think, can this person handle it? Should we be doing this? And I need to look after that person.
Peter said, are you moving here to the UK?
It's actually really nice here, and no offence, but I had this vision that it was this horrible angry place with an angry mob with, like on The Simpsons with the pitchfork, waiting for me when I landed. But it's beautiful here, so absolutely, I'd love to move here if the opportunity came up.
There's another tweet that says, this incident has made life more difficult for radio journalists. And I think what this person was talking about is when radio journalists, let's say there's been a car crash on the motorway and they have to contact the hospital, that suspicion now between, you know, people who man hospitals or any other emergency services, if they're constantly worrying about being pranked, that they, you know, somebody says, I'm calling from a radio station, they're just going to be distrustful.
Well, that's where the processes in the hospital need to be looked at as well, to make sure that everyone answering and fielding those calls has the right training, and if they know they do have a special guest or a victim from something that is in the headlines, to be prepared.
And finally, and I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, it's a person saying prank calls are always just bullying, because what they were saying was that there was that sort of me and my hilarious friends in the studio versus the innocent dork who's answering the phone and we're going to make them look really stupid. Can it ever be not that?
If the joke is on us, the joke always needs to be on us. And if you are going to do a prank, you need to know the person that you're pranking. If you know that your friend is someone that can handle it, that might be a way of still doing it, because they can be great if they're done in the right way and if the process is going to ensure that everyone is protected.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that I have reflected all your tweets accurately, so apologies if I've missed yours. I have tried to keep an eye on all of them. And I also think I will be speaking for the entire audience and the radio industry to say that you have our admiration for being so brave and honest. Please say a big thank you to Mel Greig.